Hello, and thank you for joining us for another edition of the Florida Chamber's Bottom Line. I'm Matthew Choi, Director of Policy, Education, and Quality of Life. Today we are joined by Dr. Carrie Pigman, one of two practicing physicians here in the Florida House. Dr. Pigman, you have some very important legislation coming up this legislative session. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, thank you, Matthew. This year I'm running a bill that would allow certain nurse practitioners to have independent practice, meaning unsupervised practice. This is the 7th year I've ran this effort. I think we're going to be successful this year. But what it would do would allow a nurse practitioner who's completed all of her training, all of her formalized training, had achieved her master's degree or higher, and has also gone through some 2 years of supervised practice to be able to practice independently without requiring supervision.
Now, Dr. Pigman, why is this type of legislation necessary here in Florida?
You know, it's actually critical, and there's a very core piece of it which is fundamental to what we do in the legislature and what my goals are. Currently, we require those nurse practitioners to be supervised by a physician forever. Now, supervision, if it's really done, if it truly is an effort, will involve a cost and time. And what we've discovered over the years, and 30 other states allow independent practice, is that nurse practitioners who are appropriately trained and appropriately skilled practice medicine, especially primary care, as skillfully as a physician does. There's no increased incidence of complications, there's no increased problems. In fact, most patients are entirely satisfied, which gets back to the core. If there's no safety return in supervision and then there's a cost associated with it, then for me as a legislature, being a steward of the taxpayer's dollar, has to ask, why do we have in statute this cost driver for health care?
Outstanding. So continuing on with this idea of cost savings, is there any cost savings to the consumer themselves?
There probably would be, and this is the next part of it, which is a key kernel. It increases competition in the field. We have a shortage of primary care. We have a shortage of all healthcare providers in Florida, but especially primary care health providers. And for a doctor like me, who works in an emergency department, what I see are patients who can't get in to see their doctor because their doctors are too busy. So for someone like me, who's a boots on the ground kind of guy, it's also an access to care issue. We physicians are so busy, we need additional help. Allowing nurse practitioners to exercise and practice their skills to the full extent of their training would actually enhance access to care. And maybe after we've enhanced access to care, we can talk about cost savings. But another important bit of this is that when we have in statute some regulatory requirement that doesn't benefit the consumer, but costs something, you know that that cost is going to go down the chain and ultimately be paid as a pass-through to the consumer. In that, Florida taxpayers pay 40% of the Medicaid expenses, 60% comes from the federal. Any cost driver in the healthcare system is hurting the taxpayers of the state of Florida. That's why it's critical that we get out of this archaic and old-fashioned way of regulating nurse practitioner practice and kind of wake up into the 21st century.
Outstanding. So this is the 7th and hopefully final time. If you could leave the business community just with one thought on why this is important and why this should be passed, what would that be?
Probably the best one is, this is an example of a statutory or government-induced restriction or requirement that benefits no one. If it benefits anyone, it may benefit a few physicians who are in the supervising business who collect money for it. But it doesn't benefit the consumer, and it doesn't benefit the professional that we're regulating. It is one of those examples of governmental intrusion which is hurtful to the delivery of health care. That's why it's important that we get rid of it.
Well, Dr. Pigman, thank you so much for this great legislation, and thank you for joining us for another edition of The Bottom Line.